So gamification, I realized that when we presented this, that maybe faculty members might assume that we're going to teach them how to create games. I don't think I could do that in an hour. I'm remiss to say I don't know who could teach that in an hour, but I do want to connect you, and our team wants to connect you to resources that are available to implement game-like elements within your course. One of the things I would like to touch on first is the DLI Quest. Some of you, if you were here last time, we presented on a new sort of form of faculty development and trying to gamify our professional development through this quest, giving you opportunities to accomplish different tasks for points. So just wanted to, again, point your attention to it. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, need access to any courses or things in order to gain points. If you see that the updated leaderboard doesn't have your correct points, feel free to email us and let us know. Is on a trip in Peru, which is wonderful. Created this Gene.ly interactive sort of map that allows you to give more information and sign up for various things that you can earn points for. So just kind of reminding you again, and of course you get points for just coming. So you already got, what, 1,500? No, 500 points. 500 points. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the MIT Game Lab. Now I haven't seen a lot of things coming out of here since like post 2016, but maybe they got something in the works currently going on. But what's great is they have a lot of research based on game design, on learning, things that they have studied that might be beneficial for you, maybe to share with other fellow faculty members, share with your departments, share with people that you work that are asking how can we make learning a little bit more engaging. They have a lot of research and studies for you to look at. But for the purpose of this, I wanted to share with you the games that they actually already have that are free to download and free to use. Now, while I'm saying 2016 is because, hello, welcome, hey, hello, welcome. One of the things that they have, and this is why I'm saying 2016 is because the most up-to-date game that they have had is from 2016, but it's a real estate game. So I know we don't have any business faculty here currently, but if you're a business faculty or no business faculty that want to teach real estate, this might be a fun game to utilize. And a lot of this is open access, meaning you can download it, incorporate it into your course, maybe manipulate it if you see some forms of improvement. So wanted to highlight some of this. Digital archaeology, maybe that might be something you could utilize in your particular subject matter. And one of the games that I was planning on using for ADA compliance training was this accessibility for visual impairment. Just because some people, right, most of us don't have maybe some of those visual auditory disabilities, and maybe getting exposed to how it is being online or being in the internet with some of those impairments and simulating that might give us a better understanding of why it's important for us to try to be ADA compliant. But a lot of the stuff is, adaptive literature, various subject matter here for the games that are available, as well as, some social issues here. But like I said, some of it hasn't been updated since, so maybe we need to create our own game lab. I know we have Clay here, who's a gaming expert in residence at our university, so it's wonderful. Hello, Vanessa, welcome.
Hey.
Please have a seat. I know it's intimidating. You just came in.
Oh.
So yeah, I wanted to share this resource with you just in case there's a game here that you want to incorporate. And of course, we would be happy to process that for you to help you incorporate that into your online course. One of the other websites that I frequent a lot is EdSearch. Now, it's not so academic as maybe Inside Higher Ed or some of the other periodicals that you might be aware of, but they have a lot of companies and information on emerging tools that are being utilized by either private companies, higher ed, K through 12. And this particular page, and I really wanted to share it with you, and I'll share it through email, has a lot of different resources all in just kind of one place. It talks about how gaming empowers learners, 21st century skills, how it can enhance some of those creative abilities that it seems the tech industry is particularly fond of. So it has, and what I love about EdSurge is the articles are short, right? So I think sometimes we don't want to get bogged down in the 30-page, 40-page research articles. This summarizes it within, I would say, a page. So it's a wonderful resource to have and utilize. And as you scroll down, it has all the articles regarding gaming in one place. Again, these 21st century skills, articles on gaming in the classroom, some of the stories of how school districts, for instance, have used Minecraft. Again, some more resources for game-based learning. Teaching with Minecraft. Some more stories. As you see, it's all here, some videos. But I came down to this, and I thought this was pretty cool. So if I'm a professor, and I want to, maybe on a topic of history, or maybe a topic of mathematics, I still want to hit on digital citizenship, right? What does it mean to be a citizen of the digital world? And for this case, online community, I want to make sure that these students understand that what they post online matters, right? Kind of netiquette, so to speak, how to be appropriate in that classroom setting. And there's a whole lesson plan already created, not for just you, but how you can utilize this game in order to teach that particular lesson. And of course, all of them deal with 21st century skills, not particular subject matters. But you could, I feel, frame it in a way that it might still hit your particular specific topic.
And they have versions for different ages? Is that what I'm seeing in the screen there?
Looks like they do, yep.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So if we put the link in our course, then they can actually go there and play that game? Or do you embed it into our own course?
Seems like, yeah, it seems like you can you embed it, you can have a link, and then you can also download the game as well.
Okay, great.
So I wanted to just lightly touch on those resources. Again, I'm going to share that with you to have time to explore and see if there's anything of interest to you that we can implement. And we're lucky to have Vanessa here, the creative studio, right? She's the librarian that runs the creative studio here in the library. And we wanted to have this session here, right? Some of you who've been here before, we had the session in Allen Hall. But we wanted to have this particular session here to connect with Vanessa as a resource. And we're also fortunate enough for Clay to have a moment to be here. And hopefully he'll want to speak towards the end as well, maybe, if he fancies. He's not sure. But
I'll give you another cookie.
Yeah. Good compensation.
But I'm going to go ahead and segue to Vanessa, since we're a little crunched for time, to kind of discuss what tools are available. I know there's a 3D printer downstairs. We have some VR. I don't want to steal your thunder here. I'm going over all this. But we have a VR set back there, and how she has seen it utilized so far. And kind of talk a little bit more specific about that.
I just came from the Wesley House where I was giving my spiel over and over and over again, so I'm ready to go. So,
Nice.
Yeah, so we're Creative Studios. I say UM Libraries now because we are in Richter, but we do have a satellite that just opened up last fall in the music library, and we have equipment available in Rasmus as well, and we're looking to expand into the architecture library. So we help with the audiovisual and multimedia projects. We have equipment rental, cameras, video cameras, GoPros, digital recorders, light kits, VR kits. Oh, I didn't even see you there. Large format printing for posters, 3D printing. The music library satellite has an audio production booth, so if anybody needs to reserve some space to record audio in a nice quiet setting, you can do it there. And then our staff is pretty knowledgeable in the equipment and the software. We all have kind of a general knowledge on everything, but we do specialize. I specialize in graphic design, and I actually teach a course in it in School of Communications. I have my cinematographer, my videographer took over for me so I could come here. We also have a photographer on hand, and then the staff person in the music library specializes in audio and sound. So aside from knowing Adobe and learning Adobe, the music library also has primarily the music and audio equipment, Pro Tools, Logic, and Ableton Live. So as for the gaming aspect, we just basically started collecting in games fairly recently, maybe a couple years ago. Clay was part of that team. Most of our equipment, and I would say half of our game collection, is donated from the School of Communication game design program. Thank you, Clay. And who have basically donated enough equipment that we are now loaning them out. So you can actually check out the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Wii to take home like you would any of our other equipment, now that we have backups to spare. So we have video games are in the Creative Studio. The board games, we have board games, and they're located at the CERT desk. For now, when we remodel our space, we're going to move all the games into one space, and we also have role-playing manuals available. So I'll speak a little about the VR equipment. We have in the studio an Oculus Rift with the touch controllers that you can check out for the 5-day rental. If your computer at home can handle the specs, then by all means. If not, we have a computer in the lab that you can use with the equipment. And we have 2 Oculus Go's, but one is out of commission right now. And that's the hands-free visor that just connects to your mobile device, and you can check that out for the 5 days as well. So for the Oculus Go, it runs off your mobile device, so you would download the app on your phone or your tablet. We don't have any games on our account. We're not going to give you our account information if you're taking it home. So you're required to have your own account and download whatever software that you want to use there. If you're going to use it in the library, right now the only things that we have loaded are experiences that are free for Oculus. And then up here we have the HTC Vive. This is thanks to Academic Technologies. They set it up here. This is the faculty exploratory, so it's open to all faculty to be able to use the space. If you want your students to use it, you can work with myself or with Gemma and Academic Technologies to have your students come in and do one of the experiences here. If you see an experience that you want your students to do or you want to try out for yourself, let us know, and we might be able to get it for you, especially if it's available on Steam. That's just because of the way that Oculus runs their for-purchase apps. We haven't been able to really do that portion yet. But if it's on Steam, then it's pretty much fair game. I might be able to even get some paid stuff in there. So last semester, I believe it was, we had a class that came in where the professor wanted her students to do a Google Earth tour and a museum tour. My staff was working with her, and so was Gemma. So we have the Google Earth and the museum tour preloaded into the HTC Vive over here, into the computer. So students would just come in with the person, and they would go to this virtual museum where they could look at all this artwork. And what was really great about it is that it's like a specially built museum. It's not an actual museum that exists in the world. So you have all these pieces of art that do not exist in the same space, that are all together in this one area. You can go look at the Statue of David, walk 5 feet and there's the Mona Lisa, go around the corner and there's the Terracotta Warriors. So that was pretty great. Yeah. There was another class that was doing, I wish I knew which class it was, but it's also preloaded up here, where you go up to this, it's this building, you go up to the top, it's the plank experience, and then the elevator opens up and you walk on this plank and you're on like the 100th floor or something. I tried it this morning and I did not walk on that plank. Even though I was going like this, I'm like, there's the floor. Yeah. No, I'm afraid of heights. Yeah. It takes a while. The first time that we had a class come in, it was a philosophy professor, I believe Professor Jackson, who wanted his students to write a paper on what is reality. So we had them all come in and do a virtual reality experience that was interactive. That was what they had to do. And then they had to write a paper on what is reality. And it's really interesting with that, because I see some students killing robots and they're kind of like this. They're not even engaged. And then one kid was really tall ran his hand through the low drop ceiling because he was ripping a robot in half. So it's pretty interesting. So any questions?
And I was really excited to have Vanessa here just because I think sometimes we're very focused where we are and not realize that, hey, we have experts, resources here, some tools available for free to utilize, particularly here in the Creative Studio and in this faculty exploratory. And thank you for sharing those faculty experiences.
The gaming collection is part of our fiscal year. I have a certain amount of money that I get to spend on games. So we do take requests. If you're interested in us acquiring something that we don't have, you want your students to have, whether it's a board game, a video game. We've just started collecting in video games that we don't have the consoles for as of yet, so we're starting to collect for PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. I mean, as far as creation in VR, we have a 360 camera, which is really kind of the easiest way to get started into making VR, because you don't have to know any coding. You just have the 360 video or photo, and then Google just came out with a really great tour maker. It's pretty intuitive, where you can have like 360 photos and then like add little points of interest that you can then view.
Wonderful. And I think that's probably more applicable for fully online classes, right? Sometimes it's difficult to imagine, right? The VR tools here, how are we going to get it to online students? But maybe utilizing a 360 camera, maybe you're giving a tour of a particular location at UM to try to get these students to, there might be from a distance or online, to be more connected to the university. I think that'd be a great option.
We had a professor in theater who was using that virtual tour experience because he was in theater and the set designer was in Europe. So he did the 360 view of the place so the set designer could see what he was designing for.
Smart.
Yeah.
So, awesome, the digital workplace, right? It is fascinating. I do want to share an additional resource here that Ron had shared. Ron is right over there. Hello, Ron.
Hello.
Gamification in education. 4 ways to bring games to your classroom. And let's see. Are there easy 4 ways that I can read? Or
Yes.
okay. Gamification in grading.
Yep.
Changing the point structure and maybe having some sort of leaderboard might be a great way to, in a very simple way, right? Gamify, of course. I mean, students are already technically involved in a game called school, right? I think school is a game where, people get A's, some people get B's, some people get C's. Changing that to a point structure might make it a little bit more competitive and maybe get some of those students who aren't traditionally involved with the traditional school game to be involved.
One thing, Luis, on that
yes, sir.
is that really brought my attention to, which is the grading system and the points, is that you're not only gamifying the actual grade book and the assignments and things like that. It's more along the lines of some professors I read in other articles what made it really interesting is that they had, if you reach a certain level, you would unlock another level. So they had that gamification part of it and incorporated that. It caused a curiosity. Well, I already reached this point. I want to see what's beyond. And that's just one of the interesting points of gamifying in that section of your class.
That's a great point. Award students with badges. Blackboard already has some built-in badges, but we've currently have a contract with another badging company, Credly. We haven't, it hasn't been maximized yet, but if you are interested in giving and handing out badges to your students, to learners for an activity, or even in your departments, if you're working and you want to award people for accomplishing certain tasks, we can explore that option further. And that's another great way to sort of integrate gaming into your course or workplace. Integrate educational video games into your curriculum. You had talked, Vanessa, that we have some video game systems and some gaming. A lot of them have relevancy. Is there one particular game on your mind that you feel has some relevancy in education? If you would point one out.
So the games that we've collected are usually like best of winning games. So one of the games that always comes up in my mind, first is Journey, because of the music element. It was, I think, the first video game that won a Grammy or something like that. So that's amazing. We have the score in the music library as well. What else? Wait, just left my mind. Okami? Did I get that right? Okami?
Yeah.
Yes.
The one.
Right, because it's very visually
It's a
beautiful.
gorgeous
It
game,
uses,
actually.
it's a gorgeous game, and it uses
It
this
is.
really amazing art form. So I mean that's my knowledge.
No, that's great. That's great. I
Not
apologize for
necessarily
putting you on the
game
spot.
design. Well, you know, I remember when we were talking, I mentioned that that CDC World of Warcraft event.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
they had World of Warcraft had created this online disease that was running through the system, but I guess the way they programmed it, it went a little bit out of control, and almost every character and NPC, non-player character, got infected, and like massive amounts of areas died from this. You know, and yeah, your character regenerates, but it was an issue, and it was such a huge issue that eventually the CDC asked the World of Warcraft people for the information so they could study how the disease was spreading.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is reality, right? What is reality?
Right on.
Stir up a little competition. And you know, Ron, this is your resource. I don't know if you want to share a little bit more about that particular.
On starting up a little bit of competition, it's really good because it's like we're engaging the students. You know, we're trying to get after them to want to explore more on their own. Not just I'm going to sit here and see what my professor is going to give me. What do I need to read? What do I need to write? And then I get to move on. Here, it causes that conversation amongst the students and that competition of I want to see what I could research that I could find that nobody else has before the rest of them. So it's a really nice little concept to put in a course because it gets that engagement piece like really going really sky high right off the top, because you can start feeding them a little bit of information in the beginning, and it just opens up their mind to more curiosity of what could I do next? What do I need to explore? Where could I find this? And I want to be the first one to share it. So the idea of having competition is great amongst your classroom, because now you've reached out to them in a way of that's a lot different than write me a 500-word essay on the following. And this kind of engagement piece is very interactive among students, and it causes a lot of conversation, and it spreads. Other students start talking to other students like, hey, I took so-and-so's course, and we started off in the beginning and I picked up this information and that, and it kind of just lets them guide their own education and what they're going to get out of the course itself. So something to think about when you are incorporating something like that into a classroom setting.
Fantastic.
And online, it could be online or face-to-face as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I do want to address Clay here in the room. He's a faculty member from communications. And you, correct me if I'm wrong, you've had experience building games from scratch, right?
Yeah.
Concepts. And particularly, I want to share a story that I got to see his presentation during a narrative techniques workshop that was held here. And he talked about a game that he had worked on dealing with mosquitoes, right? And in the bug population, and sort of trying to teach people how mosquitoes tend to spread and how the diseases can happen, where they fester, and how we got to monitor where there's open water and different various other places that mosquitoes could grow. And I got to play it, and I thought it was a lot of fun. And I guess I talked about that experience of kind of developing a game from scratch and making it learning based.
Wow, okay. Yeah, learn how to design a game. I mean, like, game design is like a craft. It's an art as much as it is like a science, but more of an art. And it's really just learning how to design engagement. Instructional designers, I think, are maybe more suited for it than just an average person, because you're trying to create engaging content already, and teachers are the same way, right? Like, you're trying to get your class to follow along with what you're doing. Maybe you're not the best designer, maybe you just do like a really long, boring lecture and nobody is in it. But, I mean, obviously you're just creating a system. The first game that you create will suck. The second one will probably also suck. And you have to keep iterating and playtesting, and it takes a long, long time.
Maybe guinea pigs to try it out.
Yeah, you need people to play test it. But, I mean, and maybe I should, I don't know. Yeah, I don't wanna like rain on the game parade, but. Okay, where to start?
You're over it? You're over the.
No, I'm not over it, but I think there's a lot of hype and you have to pull away from the hype to really get at what's important. I love that this is being recorded too. So. It's cool. I'm tenured now, so. Okay, so like the one thing to know, like game-based learning, is a lot of it's really focused on K-12. It's not for higher ed. And the reason is money. People are developing experiences, and the best way in the ed tech market is to go to a school district and sell the games there. You can't do that at a university. It doesn't work as well. That being said, if you want to bring games into the classroom and using games as a medium, think of it like a book. You wouldn't go and assign a book that you hadn't read, right? That would be insane. So you need to go play the games. And if you play a lot of games, then you might go, oh, you know what? This one is actually really interesting. Maybe you play Journey and you go, wow, like the way that I interacted with people was fascinating. I've never had that social interaction before. And maybe you're a sociologist, right? So now you want to integrate that game into your lesson because it's literally talking about concepts and theories based on that. So you can talk about the game as like a starting point to launch a much deeper conversation. I find that that's much more fruitful than being like, we'll play this game, like play a game that like has this thing that I'm not really sure about, and like, okay, or like learn math, right? It's like, oh, I played Math Blaster and I learned algebra, you know, like that's a bitter pill for me to swallow. Because ultimately you're offloading your responsibilities as a teacher to this platform that has like very specific and rigid rule sets.
So you would say almost at the after-action review, right? The discussion that the
It's
game
way-
first is
way
way
more
more important
Way
than the actual game itself.
Yes, the game is just a conversation piece, right? And so for a higher ed too, I think you're gonna get a lot more traction from having them play serious games, or transformational games, as some people call them, or social impact games, because their primary objective isn't fun, it's some other thing. So maybe it's a game about poverty, maybe it's a game about mosquitoes, right? But it has this other piece to it, and it's like a launching pad for that, right? So if I had my class read To Kill a Mockingbird, right, we could talk about racism, right? If we had them play Humans versus Mosquitoes, we could talk about vector-borne diseases and how that relates, right? It's just a way to bring it in and make it like a cohesive unit. It's also, games are the dominant medium for students today. Like so like my generation, we have movies that we talk about, right? Like, oh, I remember the first time I saw E.T., right? It was like seminal moment. Everybody's seen E.T., that's my age, right? But for our students, it's like the first time, the thing that everybody has in common is like Pokemon. Like they all know Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
They don't have a movie that they all have seen. They don't. If you find one, tell me, because I've gone through my classes and been like, hey, like everybody write like the first movie they saw, and we're trying to find like connections. They don't have it, but games, they definitely have it. So that's that piece. Okay. I'm gonna poo-poo that. Okay. Gamification. So that has a ton of hype too. I built my own LMS that has gamification, gameful learning like embedded into it. Basically, there's game-based learning. If you throw that away from the idea of gamification and not just using games in the classroom, but actually making your class a game, you get into two modes of play. One is using elements from game design to make your class more interesting. That would be like the leaderboard example. Like, let's put a leaderboard. The other would be creating a story world. So like Lee Sheldon was the first person that said, I'm gonna make my entire class into guilds, and we're gonna have this magic quest that people go on, right? Which is totally cool. Like if I showed up the first day of class and you were like, hey, so I am your dungeon master, and you know, you are the tree wizards, and you guys are sorcerers, right? And there's this there's battle that's going on and be like, oh, cool, right? But then it leads me to the point where it's like, okay, so if I was like a tree wizard in one class, and then I go into my next class, and they're like, oh, so now we're all in the military, and you're a lieutenant, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I go into my next class, and they're like, yes, this is the Flintstones theme, right? And then I go to the next class. I have 5 classes that I'm in, and I've got to keep track of 5 different stories. That seems bonkers to me. So the novelty of that wears off really quick, I think. It's just that people aren't investing that time to make their class into a story. But if it's a good story, you're gonna get people involved. There's an example of a Latin class that uses like the birth of Rome as like their story world. And it gets a lot of traction, and they teach like ethics in the class, and it's really cool. But you can't replicate that. It's not something that we can just be like, oh, just do that, right? Because you also have to be a storyteller. On the other hand, using gimmicks, right, like badges and points and everything, it gets into like a little thing, and you take away the story, so Queso, the LMS that I created, it takes away the story, but just has things like point systems, levels to unlock and everything. It works for some students, and other students, it just does not work. So I've had students that have a system, they use the system, and they have an A, and they have like 3 weeks of class left. But they were so, like, they felt compelled by having a 0 at like an F at the beginning of class where they're building up to an A, that they just had to get the A.
Yeah.
But then others that are like, it's just stressful. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not anything else other than stressful to see that I have an F. And then I think about like leaderboards, and so I've had this discussion with the guy that makes Gradecraft, which is another.
Yes, and that's from Michigan, right?
Yeah, so Barry Fishman is the lead on that, and we've talked and like shared stories or whatever, and the idea of leaderboards has come up, but then you run into like, well, if you have a leaderboard, right, then somebody's going to be on the bottom of that leaderboard, and now you're showing everybody in the class.
Right.
Oh, look who sucks. That's problematic,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you might do like the top 1.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe top 5 or top 2, and then just
Yeah,
leave
but
the rest to the imagination.
yeah, yeah. So like, I'm teaching a big class this semester, and I'm getting a lot of engagement through discussion questions. And they generate the discussion questions. And I learned this from Andrew Porter. I was like sweating, like coming up with discussion questions. He's like, no, like make them do the reading. And it's like, yeah, but how do you get them to do the reading? It's like, have them submit discussion questions for points. It's like, oh, that's brilliant. They generate the content, and then you discuss it in class, and they're tied into it because it's the questions that they have on their mind, right? So they're gonna wanna discuss them. So if I am like, ooh, technology morality, discuss. And they're like, I don't want to talk about that. Great.
Right.
But then it's like, I feel like I'm fake online. It's like, oh yeah, okay, let's talk about that. Right? Yeah. And then you get real responses, and it's great. And most of that class is discussion, and they all think. Oh wait, where's this airing? I feel like I've designed this experience where they don't know. They're shook. They think that I'm like, that this thing is the most important, but it's actually this thing. And they're having these really rich conversations. That's like what I think college is supposed to be about, and not about like answering the right questions, right? And so it's working. And there's no games in that class. Like it's not a game class.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm happy to answer any questions and everything. If you're a budding game designer, I can point you towards game stuff too. My suggestion for that though is if you want to build a game for a subject, partner with a game designer.
Yeah. Well, I guess this would be more in the context of novices, people who are maybe not familiar, how they can, integrate maybe some elements of gaming within a course, kind of get started.
Yeah, play games.
Play games.
Yes. The library has a wonderful collection. That's a great place to start,
Have
right?
learned from them. Yeah, no, I agree with, was it, not last year, but the year before, where I created an exhibit for the library with Clay's help about games and education. And it was really kind of like he was mentioning, like To Kill a Mockingbird, you can discuss racism. You have these games and you can discuss, certain elements. So the exhibit was, it would point out a game and then list off ideas of what subject area might be interested. So like, for example, BioShock has a lot of Ayn Rand elements in it,
Yeah.
so that might be interesting for class discussing, Ayn Rand. And yeah, so that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
The other side of that is like game studies. So there's a whole field out there that's still kind of in its infancy, as in like they haven't matured yet.
Yeah.
But it's people that are playing games and then looking at them critically. So if you're like, I don't have time to play like a 55-hour session of like BioShock,
Yeah.
right? There's a series called Well Played. There's Well Played lectures, and then also just the Well Played journal. So the Well Played journal is out of CMU, and you can just read articles where they're talking about specific games, so you can get an idea of what that game's like without playing it. If you watch the video lectures, a lot of times they'll just be playing through a game, pointing out things that they found interesting. So it's a good way to get a quick hit on a game, to know if you need to go play it more. I mean, obviously, if you're like, ooh, I want to use that in my class, you still go play that game, right?
Mhm.
You can't use the cliff notes. You gotta play it. But Well Played, and any like game studies articles will at least talk about games, or try to talk about games in a sophisticated way, that you might be able to bring into your classroom and talk about relevant topics.
You highlighted the Queso LMS
Yeah.
system. Is that something that if a faculty member might be interested in, they could also utilize
They
for their
could.
course if they talk to you, of course, first?
Yeah, no. I mean, actually, they don't have to talk to me. They could just build a site off of it. I mean, they might want to talk to me if they get stuck or something.
Yeah.
It's basically perpetual beta, so there's, bugs you might run across. Teacher beware. And I stopped using it this semester. I'm trying to do my classes out of Teams. And that's actually working really well. So, yeah. I'm not a fan of Blackboard, but, yeah, anyways. That's my 2 cents.
Drop mic, right?
Yeah.
Drop mic.
Peace. See you guys later.
And I don't know if anybody else wants to talk about, their sentiments towards gamification, gaming, their experiences gaming. I mean, I know personally, in elementary school, I still remember pretty vividly getting excited when we had the opportunity to just like play Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
Maybe you can argue that, this stuff, it's not that big of a deal, but man, it sticks with you. Like I can still remember,
Just
World
last
is
year,
coming to San Diego.
I made it. Just last year, I made it to Oregon and I only lost one person.
in
In
the river.
Yes, actually in the river. And in my 30s, I found Carmen San Diego. And it took me 20 years, but I found it.
So I don't know if anybody else wants to share experiences playing games, board games, things.
Well, one of the things I read about was that one way, if you do have a leaderboard, to combat that idea of someone being at the bottom, was to do more of a team competition, so that if a team is at the bottom, it's not one person, it's
Right.
just that then it becomes competitive, like they're pulling for their team to be in a higher standing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's where like
Something
the
about-
Sheldon has like the guilds, so it's like
Yeah.
two sides of the class like in competition with each other. That seems to work for it.
Wonderful. I guess we all have different skill sets, right? So if you put a group together, then they'll be able to accomplish certain elements that maybe as an individual be too daunting to try to take on themselves.
Yeah. Oh, I should mention this too, because so I threw an element of game design. Well, something that I learned as a game designer, pulled it into the classroom, but in a very different way that wouldn't be considered gamification.
Yeah.
So at the start of the semester, everybody came in as normal. I had them read a chapter in this book that talked about information overload, which is basically a critique of technology. And then I was like, hey, who's willing to like give up their laptop and phone and everything, like check it in at the beginning of class for the rest of the semester for extra credit? And like half the class was like, okay, I'd be into this. And then one student was like, well, how much extra credit are we talking about? And I was like, 10% of your grade. And it was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the class, like you could feel like the excitement, right? And they were like, and like I was like, who's in? And it was just like, like there's 2 or 3 students that aren't doing that out of 50 students. Like they all want that extra credit, right? I was doing it because I don't care about their grades. I want them to be engaged. And looking out at them trying to have the first discussions, they're all distracted, right? But I didn't want to put something in my syllabus that said you can't use your technology, because then they come into that experience going, this guy. Maybe they do have like that experience that's better, but ultimately they're feeling like I'm depriving them, but I wanted them to feel responsible for their choice of doing that, right? So everybody's like, oh, and they go to that class and they're feeling like, good, but I'm a designer, right? So I wanted to throw another wrench into their thinking. So they come into the next class and I go, hey guys, so everybody's like thinking about that thing, so I just want to lay the ground rules. And I'm like, okay, so here's what it is. You get 10 points, you're gonna like check in your device. I've got this like sheet, you're gonna like, check it, you do it. If you get holes in the thing, then you're no good and on your way. Or you don't do it and you have your device and everything's good. Or you check in your device and everything, but you don't get 10 points extra credit. But for the midterm and the final, I'm going to give you notebooks. Or I gave them notebooks to like write notes in, like when they're like, I'm going to do this challenge, right? I'm like, so that notebook that you're writing all your notes in during the class, you can use that in the midterm and the final. And then it was like, what? And then they were like, oh, now, wait, do I have to decide now? I was like, no, you can decide on like the day of the midterm, right? And that, they were shook. Like they didn't know what to do. And so now like we're getting to the midterm, and some of them are like, man, I've already used up like my 10 points by like not turning in like certain reading assignments. And other people are like, I am definitely using my notebook, right? Like this is gonna be awesome. And then other people are like, no, just give me the 10, right? But they've got to think about how they want to do it. And every single time they come into class, they're more and more engaged in the stuff that we're talking about. The buy-in is just
That's wonderful.
going up.
Yeah, because there's a lot of articles out there, right, talking about professors, trying to limit the amount of technology that's within their classroom. And obviously, when we're talking online learning, that's inescapable, right? They log into the computer to see the class. But in the face-to-face context, that is very profound in doing it that way and pivoting that way, because I know there has been a lot of backlash when professors write that on the syllabus or make those sort of rules. So that's very interesting, very interesting. Just want to, it's an open forum, right? It's an EdTech Cafe, so it's not exactly, anything official. So I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to share, talk about, in regards to gaming, gamification, the hype. Do you feel it's overhyped? Do you feel is it intimidating as a professor to try to incorporate game elements into your course?
I think it's a lot of work. If I go back to my teaching, and my best memories teaching were games I did with the class. And I remember, because this was in the K-12 realm, students did not want to misbehave because I was quick, you're gone. And they did not want to miss that class because you did not know what happened that class period, what kind of game we're going to do, how it was going to affect things. So you get that excitement that you can't wait to get in there.
Yeah.
And I think it just kind of changed mentality. But also on the other end, the things they learn and how they put their passion into the things we did, whether it's Mayan civilizations or Japanese. I did a lot of different cultural stuff where they became part of clans, guilds, whatever you want to call it. It was just really powerful, I thought, and got them excited. And then because they come in with that excitement, I may not have my A game that day. We might be doing something a lot lower,
Right.
But they're still there. They're still engaged.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think you set the tone, and you never know, and it's going to just keep building.
Yeah, and yeah, facilitated games are great. Like especially as like a one-time activity, like we're gonna do a simulation of you know, like Model UN kind of thing, whatever.
Right, yeah,
But it is a lot of work.
yeah.
Like, be prepared to prep like you've never prepped before. Because you have to have like the whole game ready.
Yeah, like I did Model UN too, you have all the resources and it's so much, and you got all these different piles, and then you got multiple classes.
Yeah,
And whew,
yeah,
yeah, you need help. You really do.
yeah.
And fortunate enough for faculty members here, you have infinite amount of resources, a lot of staff members that are here to help ease that sort of transition and incorporation. And I feel like we did talk a lot about like face-to-face opportunities for gaming and game design, but there's still, I think some of these elements can still be done online, right? We've have a lot of different tools that we've been playing around with. I know April has been working with Flipgrid and maybe HP5, different formats where it's like video, you know, like students can respond to questions immediately through video, and it's on some sort of, you know, almost like a one page all there, so students can look at other students' responses to the same question. So that same interaction is possible, just with some creativity and maybe using something outside of Blackboard. But luckily, Blackboard allows for external links. It's fairly easy to link things. I know we've also embedded some of these tools within Blackboard, so students don't even have to leave the learning management system to enhance it. And this is something we're currently exploring further. And if you're interested, and if anybody watching this is interested, we'd be happy to work with them to incorporate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you. And I want to give a special shout out to Vanessa and Clay. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.